so powerful without no video. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what we're doing right now off camera?
Sure. Um, welcome back to Simply Simple episode 5. We're not on video today, Drew.
Yes, our voices are really good, so we are just focusing on what we do best, which is talking into the microphone.
Are you even Drew? And am I even Fauzia?
Are we even together? Are we in the same space? What's going on?
Could be different country.
How can people react to our reactions? That's the best part.
So powerful.
Have
But
you-
maybe the people didn't want to hear our voices
I hope they
and,
do, because we're speaking. Do you mean see our faces?
and see our
You know the
faces.
saying, if a bear shits in the woods and no one's there to to see it, did that really happen?
No, but I
I
really.
I, I think I butchered that.
No, I mean, I don't. Whether you've butchered it or not, that's a really good line. It's all hidden.
I think it's a pope shits in the woods and no one's there to look at
Oh,
it.
what a what?
A pope, like the pope.
Oh, that's even more controversial,
That's
eh?
just a saying. Nothing. There's no controversy really behind it. But let's talk about what we're talking about.
Today, Drew, we're talking about the great HECS debate, learning or loaning. Now, if you know us, I can't speak for you, Drew, but I am a huge believer that education opens doorways and opportunities. However, we've heard the question in this day and age of if someone should go to university and why should they have the burden of HECS over them?
That sounds good. Do you want to give us a start, Fauzia, and set the scene for exactly what we're talking about today?
All right, so we've done a bit of research from a variety of resources. So I thought maybe we'd go into the uni enrollments and set the scene as to how many individuals enrolled into uni. So total enrollments, now our data is a bit outdated, but spare with us because I'm sure these numbers would have somewhat substantially changed post-COVID in 2023. Wait, COVID was when?
2020.
This is post-COVID stats.
I think it's only 2 years old. Likely to be substantially similar.
You reckon?
I think so.
Interesting.
We can let the viewers, I mean listeners, decide that
Editing
question.
Drew, put a poll up somehow. Oh no, this is more YouTube Fauzia.
No,
Put a poll up.
You can put polls up on Spotify, I think.
Oh, that's fun. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you know what, Drew? Approximately 1.61 million students were enrolled in an Australian university in 2023, comprising both domestic and international students. And I do want to premise this number, I believe, if I'm doing my maths right, we all know Drew is the maths whiz here, includes undergrad and postgrad enrollments.
Wow, and you're one of those. How do you feel?
I feel old. Drew, do we have any stats on dropout rates?
Yeah, we do. There's been a source that suggests that for students who did commence a bachelor's degree in 2017, 25% of the students had actually dropped out by 2022. So you're getting quite a lot of people dropping out, estimated around over 50,000 students annually. And these students, as we'll get into, may face significant financial burdens when we're talking about their HECS debt.
And let's talk a little bit about the HECS stats, Drew. I'm looking at it on our wonderful magical screen that our viewers
We
and
have
listeners can't
a
see.
75-inch massive TV, obviously, that we're looking at right now.
Of course, we're looking at it from a billboard too. What are our stats, Drew, on HECS debt?
Yes, of course. So as of the 2023 and 2024 financial year, the average HECS debt was around 27,000, which is up from around 26,000 in the previous years. And Australians generally take an average of 9.9 years to fully repay their student debt. So these are quite a lot of financial commitment and obligations that these students do face.
And for any prospective university students, what is a HECS slash a help loan, and are they the same thing?
Sure. So for those international audiences and those who might not be familiar with the Australian university system, so HECS, or by its formal name, HECS Help, is essentially a loan from the Australian government that you can use to pay your student contribution amount. So essentially, it's a loan from the government. It is
Mhm.
not a loan from a private institution, and the idea is that the government helps students by placing students in what's called Commonwealth support places, and the idea is that students pay the debt as they start earning income throughout their working career.
Mm,
So the essence is you'll only start paying the debt when you earn the money required to pay it off.
that's
So in
right.
a sense, the intention is for it to be a bit more forgiving than a private institution.
To say our student ambassador role is coming out a bit. It's great.
Of course, of course.
Sorry, we're having issues with the mic and our magical stand.
Bear with us. We're having some tech issues.
I will fix the tech issues. All right,
They
Drew.
are fixed.
So now that we've set the scene with what HECS is, I want you to talk a little bit about what is university, what is higher education to someone who is considering university, and how HECS slash help. I think you've really touched on this. Did I burp? That's ASMR. I think you've touched on this. How HECS help works.
I have, and like I said, I'm not a wonk, as they call it.
A wong.
A wonk, yes. That's someone who.
That's the first I've heard you.
It's yeah. I know. I always like bringing out these fancy words.
Like every episode, there's some kind of word you're gonna drop on me
It's
that
all
you've
about
never used.
sophistication
Wow.
and the appearance of giving advice.
In-
The question was, what is university? So I have touched upon the debt part of university, which I think is hopefully quite simple,
Mm,
for lack of a better word. This is the
yes.
simple podcast. And so university or higher education is the education that individuals can voluntarily choose to do after high school. So after you complete your school certificate and your HSC, some people will want to go to university to continue their studies. Sometimes this is because a career path that a student wants to do is locked behind, to use some of those terms, behind a degree. So for example, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an architect, for example, you might need to study and get a qualification, and that'll allow you to be um, considered a professional, allow you to pass those check boxes that you need to
Mm,
actually start working in the industry. Other times, university is a way to study more and get recognition for furthering your understanding in a field such as commerce, arts, English,
microbiologies.
exactly science, math. So whilst not strictly required for a job, it is often looked upon favorably by employers. So some students will decide to go to university as a way to stand out from the crowd. This is more historically compared to now, but a way to
Mm,
stand out from the crowd and to show that they are able to commit to something for a few years and do so at a reasonably high level. So that's essentially what university is.
it's
So
very interesting how post COVID, there are more, and we don't have stats around this, unfortunately. So maybe you can drop them in the comments below if you may. Um, the amount of students who I think we have dropout statistics.
we did read them out.
We did read them out, but those who have dropped out, which of those students or previous students have gone into the entrepreneurial route? That's quite interesting because we have a shifting landscape. And that's exactly why we're here to talk a little bit about why people choose to go back to university or go to university for the first
Yeah,
time.
do you want to start us, Fauzia? I gave some examples of qualifications that you might need university for, but
Oh.
do you have any other ideas as terms of why do people want to go back to university?
Even before that, Drew, what's a bachelor's degree? What's a PhD? What are the different levels of degrees? There's so much complexity.
Of course. Just a very simple explanation. Bachelor's degree is often called an undergraduate degree, and this is what you get or what you aim to get after graduating straight from high school. A postgraduate degree is something that you get after you've already got a bachelor's degree. So someone like yourself who moves back to university after doing
Mm.
their undergraduate, that will be called a postgraduate degree. And a PhD and doctorate, you're really testing my ambassador knowledge here. But
It's
that,
when you're just too cool for
yeah,
anyone who's doing their undergrad or any postgrad Juris Doctor
yeah. If you're in a
level degree.
PhD, if you're in a PhD, you'll know what a PhD is. You'll
You have a particular area or specialty. So we commend you for those who are doing their PhDs because that's not an easy feat. And I'm
yes,
sure there's hours and hours of research that
yes.
goes into your thesis slash work.
So Fauzia, why don't you start us again on why do people choose to go to and back to university? We've touched upon a bit, but
Yeah.
grateful to hear your
I
thoughts.
want to segue this into two categories. First is individuals who are in year 12 considering to go to university for the first time. And this is quite a pivotal stage because you're considering what you want to do with your life at quite a young age. Knowing what you want to do, throughout high school and then having to lock that decision in year 11 and 12 is fundamentally huge because you're entering a world where you're going to have to put in commitment and you may not find out until your second year of your bachelor's degree that you might want to pivot your degree. So, from an undergrad, fresh out of year 12 perspective, often you have a career goal in mind. And a lot of people are quite blessed to know what they want to do throughout high school. Others try and ride the wave with a degree and see where it'll get them to. So that's one aspect. The second is family slash societal pressure. I think that goes to say for itself, where you might have your network who may influence to an extent some of the decisions you make, or perhaps that pressure to bundle yourself into a particular route or a particular path. And also, there are various reasons. So, personal growth, for example, you want to try something new, something different. You may envision your life to go down a particular pathway. And it could be other factors like you want to challenge yourself as well. That is totally acceptable. So, there are various reasons as to why you would pursue an undergrad degree fresh out of year 12. Now, the second category I want to talk about is going back to university. So I think there are fundamental differences between going to university for the first time and going back to university. And I'm one of those individuals. I studied my undergrad in business and I am currently wrapping up my postgraduate Juris Doctor of Law degree. So I'm going to speak for myself and the general consensus of people who I know who have gone back to university. One is a change in their career. Maybe they're looking to spice up their 9 to 5, their work life. They have different passions, different interests. They may envision themselves elsewhere. There could be that personal growth factor as well to challenge themselves. Perhaps, and if you're maybe in a similar boat to me, you're a first gen, had no idea what you really wanted to do.
Please refer back to episode 4.
Yeah, good plug in, Drew.
Thank you.
Episode 4, check it out. That's where it's all at. Um, yes, where was I? Yes, if you're a first generation student wanting to press play on a degree that you considered but didn't have any connections to, um, variety of reasons, Drew. But those, in a nutshell, are a few reasons why people go back to university, and we've bucketed them, into two different buckets. And it's quite important to know that university isn't just for 18-year-olds. It's for people of all ages at different stages of life.
Certainly, and that is it's a very good overview. And I just want to pivot slightly. So we've talked about the reasons why students might want to study at
Mm-hmm.
university and the motivations behind that. But as we've covered a bit early in this podcast, there does seem to be a situation where the dropout rate is actually, you know, might be higher than some people expect, with a quarter of students dropping out. So,
Mm.
I mean, why do you think that university is not given a chance? And do you think that speaks anything about the motivations why people
Mm-hmm.
joined university in the first place?
I'm going to start off with the obvious factors, and feel free to chime in here, Drew. First is the cost of living and the cost of generally of a university degree. University is not cheap. It is very expensive, and it is quite indicative of what degree and pathway you're pursuing. And what I mean by that is that if you're pursuing to be a doctor, for example, you will have continued further education that will accrue additional costs.
Can you just pause there? Because we covered how the government loans you money, or
Mhm.
can loan you money. Can you explain what makes university expensive during university?
Absolutely. First is the utilities section of university, and that's more of the foundational costs to apply, enroll into your classes, and the general service fees. And they could be anywhere between, I would say 50s, but now we're pumping around $100 mark to 200. Really depends on your degree. It may also be the cost of textbooks and resources. If you're doing a more medical degree, you need to purchase not only the textbooks, but also medical equipment or practice equipment for your practical seminars. And not to mention, you will find yourself buying things along the way of university to help facilitate your studies. So it could be, a nice ergonomic chair to facilitate your study. It's not directly related to what the university wants you to purchase, um, but it certainly does facilitate and is part of the category of maybe miscellaneous expenses to help you get through your degree. So that's cost. What's a second chance or factor you think, Drew?
Well, I think people as well, they just kind of go into university because there's they haven't thought too hard about it, in the sense that once you finish high school, the common path for students who have done well in high school or grow up in families where education is a priority is you have to continue doing your education. You have to continue studying. So some people just go to university because they say, I got, a 95 ATAR, and that means I can do a commerce degree, and therefore I should do a commerce degree. And I think
Mm,
once you hit that 18-year-old side of yourself, I think people start to realize that you probably do have more independence than you might have thought. And it's not like high school. If you don't like what you're doing, you don't have to do it. Some people really, I think, have a sense of regret in terms of what they chose, or maybe not even regret, but just the idea that it's not for me. I want to do something else. So
good,
I,
good
I
points.
thank you, and I think that that's one of the reasons people drop out.
Maybe another is the workload. A third factor, where often there is this appearance or view, maybe perception's a better word, maybe they're all the same thing, Drew, I don't know. um
We like using
we
synonyms.
like options.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
mm,
Like the amount of degrees you can choose. It's a lot of options. Same
yeah,
with the amount of words we can say.
yes, absolutely, absolutely, Drew. We should maybe in the bio we'll have like the word of this episode. But anyway, sorry, I am segueing already. But the perception that university entails quite a bit of work, and that may consequentially impact or intrude upon other commitments that you are a part of. For example, if you're studying a law degree, maybe you can no longer, or you think you can't play hockey, for example, or sports, or go into dancing. While that may be the case, perhaps in more intensive periods, it certainly is possible to balance it. Um, but we won't go into that because we're going to segue into and wrap up that third factor with a bit of a segment, Drew.
Is segue the word of the podcast? Segue, segment. We like to segue.
Lacking perception, but have I said segue too much?
Oh, segue has just been a big word today, so
All right. Well, we're very
we're
excited.
gonna I'm gonna use the word pivot to mix it up.
I like that too. How about swapperoo?
Okay, we're doing a little swapperoo to our first segment of Simply Simple. This is episode 5, and we are now having segments. It's been a huge development in our
Yes.
in the podcast.
Maybe there's two of you that listen to the podcast the whole way. Shout out to Mim. But we're going to be doing We're going to spruce it up a little bit, Dhruv, and talk a little bit about, maybe not talk, we're going to be categorizing some public transport do's and don'ts. I'm going to read it out to you, and you're going to.
Can you talk about what inspired this segment?
You know, every day when I'm on the train, only the weekdays, you won't see me on a train on the weekends.
It's not very environmental of you.
It's not environmental. It's because I'm walking. Are you assuming I'm driving?
I am, and I think the listeners are too.
Oh, listeners, I walk. I have my running shoes on in the magical location that we are at now. So, what inspired me is just the conversations I have with a lot of my friends around public transport, a lot of conversations I have with Dhruv. These aren't
Conversations
conversations.
is a fun way of
I was,
saying
I
it.
was thinking the exact same thing. Venting. Venting
It's
is
a
the
very
right word.
one-sided conversation, really.
Absolutely. And honestly, just being on public transport, you run into a lot of doo-doos. So, and when I mean, what I mean by
What do you mean by doo-doo?
just discourtesy or discourteous people and just really strange, weird, obnoxious behavior. So, Dhruv, let's, without further ado, I'm going to read out a list and you're going to bucket them into forgivable or straight to jail. Now, it's a bit extreme, but
Okay, well, you have to also comment on this, I assume.
sure, no worries. I have a lot of comments around these. The first one, Dhruv, is eating warm food on the train, like sushi, hot noodles, pie, you know, where the stench is really known throughout the carriage.
Yeah, look, I think that is forgivable. If
Actually,
Yeah, I think
hell no.
I think I'm just more open and more accepting and forgiving. But I think some people are very hungry.
I have to say, if you're eating sushi or like, in my experience, I've smelt people eat hot noodles. I understand you're hungry, but surely, you know, oh, I don't know what's worse, eating that with the stench going through the carriage or you eating like a packet of chips and you're crunching the chips behind my ear. There's no in between, is
So,
there?
so you think it's straight to jail for eating warm food on the train,
I think we should stick to muesli bars.
but you don't like people crunching chips either.
Muesli bars aren't crunchy though.
They are very crunchy.
What muesli bars are you eating?
But they are crunchy.
I'm talking about the Uncle Toby's ones. They're nice and soft and oaty. Anyway, so that's forgivable in your books?
I would say so because some people, like I said, could be having a rough day, and there's no other time to eat.
If you're a, you know what, the exception is if you're a person who was fasting or if you work in the medical industry. I'll give
Now
you
we're
that.
doing exceptions. Yeah, you have to choose one bucket.
Straight to jail. All right, second one, Dhruv. Putting your foot on the seat.
Yeah, look, this is a straight to jail for me.
Absolutely.
I think there's enough places to put your feet. You can't. It's not just the seat is unacceptable.
You have the whole floor of the carriage.
Exactly, and some places even have like footrests. I think.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
haven't been on a train in a while, but I think.
You haven't. I guess the more newer trains don't really have a footrest,
I
but
think
the
with the
older
metro,
trains.
you can like kind of if you extend your feet out a bit. I don't know. I don't think you need to.
Yeah, straight to jail on that one. Using headphones.
Not using headphones.
Oh, yes, that's right. Did I not? Okay, well, not using headphones is what I was meant to say. Oh, well, actually, I have two. One is not using headphones, and the second is using headphones and you can hear the music pumping from someone's headphones. You know, it's 7:30 on the train, you're making your way to work, and the last thing you want to hear is a bit of Britney Spears.
Oh, that's like the first thing I want to hear, like
Oh,
work.
that's true. It could be a bit
Good,
motivating.
yeah, good, inspiring. You want that Maserati and all. I mean, I don't know. I thought that's quite cool.
All right, not using headphones, I think, is straight to jail. If you're having conversations or listening to music loudly, I am absolutely disgusted. Straight to jail.
Okay, I mean, I agree. I think you have to use headphones.
How about headphones with music blasting?
Sometimes it's a lack of self awareness.
Mm.
I don't think it's intentional. I think that is forgivable.
Actually, that's true because a lot of people don't know that it depends also on your headphones. I know the AirPods, you can really hear the music sometimes. But anyways, but please listen to it at a moderate volume because my ears hurt for you people.
Yeah, I think for ear health, just watch out.
Yes. Now, the next is giving your seat up for the elderly or a pregnant woman. And we're going to assume it's a packed train or metro, whatever you're on.
You know what? I want to say straight to jail, but I think it's forgivable. You never know what that person's going through.
Well,
And
the pregnant woman's growing a full-on human.
yeah, but you know, are we going to value people more in society just because of physical traits? I don't know. I mean, look, I don't like it. I'm going to be a bit controversial, but I think it's forgivable. I'm not saying it's right, but I don't think it's a straight to jail. I think there are reasonable excuses around it,
Mm.
and therefore I will say that it is a forgivable offense because that person could have, had a really tough day. They could be really tired, really exhausted, and I think it might be a bit unfair in
All right, it's
situations.
Drew's way of being nice and working around the not straight to jail, but not forgivable either. Good
I think
wording.
it's more forgivable than straight to jail.
Yeah, it's quite severe.
I assume this is a straight to jail for you.
No.
Oh,
Wait, giving a seat up?
yeah,
I've done that before. I'd say it's forgivable.
but straight to jail if you don't do it.
Oh yeah, straight to jail if you don't do
Okay,
it. But
yeah,
this is coming from the perspective of actually giving up your seat. Now, Drew, we're gonna do a bit of a spitfire, so
okay.
get ready. Okay. First is covering your mouth when wet, coughing specifically, or sneezing.
Also, alternative, you don't cover your mouth.
Oh, sorry, yes, don't cover your mouth. Wow, what the
Oh,
hell
that
went
is
into
that
me?
that is straight to jail.
Oh, disgusting. How about when someone coughs or sneezes? Especially when you're sitting in front of them and the germs ricochet from the window. I
Ricochet.
added that to the list.
Well,
Ricochet.
okay, I mean, I think that's forgivable. We all sneeze or cough. Doesn't mean we should all be sent to you know, prison.
If you're not covering your mouth or nose, that's the issue. How about moving down the carriage when there's not enough seats and you have to stand?
I don't see any issue with that. What's wrong with that?
Sometimes, like, people start, you know, banking up in the waiting platform. And, if you're one of those people who unfortunately caught a peak train and you're in the waiting platform, but people aren't getting the memo to keep moving down so there's more space. Like,
So
guys,
you mean not moving down the
not
carriage?
moving down the carriage.
Yeah, I think that's forgivable. Some people are gonna not care enough, so that's fine.
Easy. How about this one? Because this happens to me very often, especially when you're on a three-seater, which is fine, but I find that this is straight to jail. Someone who doesn't say, excuse me, but stands next to you for you to get up so they can take the seat next to you. So it's kind of like mind games.
Look, if someone doesn't say excuse me, then there's nothing for you to do. It's like
Is that
Australian
straight to jail then?
Australian rules, yeah, like straight to jail.
All right. How about taking up more than one seat with a bag?
It is only forgivable if there is no one else going to come onto the train or public transport
That's
system.
true. In the first few stops of my journey, I usually put my bag, but once I hit, Parramatta, I'm like, ooh, all right. All right, Drew, how about making eye contact, especially when people make eye contact and they're sitting on the seat that's right under the train screen and they're sitting, right opposite of you.
I think eye contact is forgivable. I think if throwback to episode 1, but we talked about dating. Why maybe eye contact can be a spark?
I think you can make eye contact, but just don't stare because that's really weird. Um, we talked. I'm going to move to the next one actually. Speaking loudly on the phone. This is straight to
Okay, it
jail.
has to be straight
Straight
to
to
jail.
jail.
Sorry.
All right. How about this? I experienced this for not the first time, but in a while actually. Having loud conversations with friends, but when you're seated in like a different area of the train, like you're not sitting together with your friends, like you've got one friend who's sitting on like a two-seater, another friend sitting across, and you're having kind of like a over the carriage conversation. That's straight to jail for me.
Yeah, like come on, sit closer, stand closer. You can't yell across the train.
If it's peak hour and there's not enough seats to sit closer, just don't speak at all, just text. And second Dhruv is typing
And
fear.
lastly,
Oh, yeah, true, because I skipped one. Last is typing furiously on the train. Sometimes I don't understand what kind of memo people are spitfiring out, but sometimes I think their keyboard may go up in flames, or I might just lose my mind hearing that at 7:30 on the train.
I think it is forgivable if you're working on the train.
Make use of it.
Something might be urgent, so it might necessitate typing fast. So I think the key takeaways is don't catch the train with Fauzia. You're gonna annoy her no matter what.
You know what? To an extent, yes. I like your way, but there are just a lot of annoying things to kind of pick up on. Anyways, this segment has increased beyond 5 minutes.
This standalone is sponsored by insert sponsor here.
We need sponsors.
We don't need it. I'm putting a placeholder.
Yeah. One day we'll look back and insert it. Anyways, Drew, going back to the great HECS debate, jump cut to where we were up to and whether,
It is worth it.
yes, is Hexstat worth it?
I want you to start, Fauzia, with giving me. But what do you think?
I touched on it a bit earlier that I think HECS, although it's financially burdensome, you are ultimately and hypothetically working towards a job that I assume will pay you well or well enough for you to sustain a comfortable life and to pay HECS back. So I see HECS as a bit of a short-term pain for a long-term gain. It opens up doorways. So whether you have a degree in law, for example, that maybe will open up doorways for you to perhaps maybe not even be a lawyer traditionally, but pursue a non-traditional path. And those skills may be quite useful in that context. So a lot of transferable skills. So those are the two opportunities, and it's a short-term pain for a long-term gain.
That's a good way of putting it. I think it depends on the course you're doing and what you want to get out of it. I think because there are some courses that might not have, perhaps when you look into it, the highest earning potential. And if that's what you're worried about, if you're going to university to
Yes.
maximize earning potential, you might want to just think about that a bit further and see if this degree is the best way to maximize your earning potential in that respect.
That goes back to maybe a factor of why people may choose to go to university or go back is because they might be doing it in part of how much they could potentially be earning. Although one thing to note is that maybe this is our disclaimer that just because you go to university or you're pursuing a degree, it won't definitively guarantee you success of a high earning role. It's just your foundational stages of your career.
Yep, of course. And do you want to touch upon the long term impacts of this step when considering pros and cons? Because you mentioned cost of living.
Yeah.
How does this having this debt impact you? Because how I see it is, if you do have this debt, this can impact your borrowing capacity for a home. It can
And
impact,
that's a hot topic
of
today
course, it can.
because they're excluding well they I mean I'm not going to go into specifics because I think it's developing news where your HECS won't be considered in your ability to borrow a loan to buy a house.
Of
Or
course,
I'm not sure if it's just the house or if it's just borrowing a loan generally.
I think it's about borrowing the loan in terms of your capacity. But
Mm.
yes, if you do have a HECS debt, that is, while it might not be very the most onerous repayments, it is certainly repayments that can impact maybe your quality of living. So once again, this goes back to the financial calculations you might want to make. And when I say that, obviously, another disclaimer: this is nothing close to financial advice. This is just talking, and please take it with as much seriousness as you would do with a clown at a circus.
I'm not going to add any comment to that. He said what he said, and he meant what he meant. But
But yeah, that's what I think
I,
is
I I think that's
okay.
the one
Yeah,
of the key long term impacts. I think a lot of people are concerned as to this HECS debt carrying along with them in their adult years, but I do think that it is a bit of a short stunt. And I can safely say that from a underprivileged background. So, I think that there are pros and cons, but look, it really depends on your circumstances. I think the long-term impacts are each to their own. If you're in a position to repay that debt, or maybe you might have other aspirations of pursuing a degree, but you already have there's a cute dog walking past. Oh, where are we? We won't disclose that. But yes, sorry. You might want a degree as a backup, but you might actually be more towards managing your own cafe. So you have kind of the best of both worlds.
Yes, that's a good. What was the word used? The transition word.
Now I
A
forgot it.
switcheroo. Yes,
Switcheroo!
let's
You
switch.
can use swapperoo
Sorry,
too.
swapperoo.
Yeah.
Let's do a swapperoo. We've talked about some of the pros and the cons of.
What if you're unsure about uni, Drew?
That's what I'm trying to say. We did talk about the pros and cons, and an astute listener to this might be thinking, "Oh, I'm not too sure anymore. Like, well, what is for me? Like, what? I don't know if university's for me. Well,
What do you do?
what would you say to them in a very general, non-advice giving
Take
way?
a gap year. I don't know about that, but I know a few friends who have taken a gap year, and a lot of them have taken a gap year either straight out of year 12 before they start university, or they've taken a gap year somewhere midway into their degree. And often a gap year doesn't necessarily mean, they're unsure about uni, but often some people just need time to reconnect with nature, touch the grass a bit before locking back in. So that's one. There's other specialties. Drew, you touched on a little bit about some degrees that may not necessarily guarantee a higher earning capacity. So you may look into more TAFE slash diplomacy works, more trade based work. Um, and I think maybe just seeking practical advice from people who've gone through the process, and maybe aiming for people who have, if you want to be a doctor, maybe any doctors you may know of, maybe even your local GP if you don't have connections, to talk about their experience and allow them to give you that practical advice you need to navigate. Anything else that I may have missed?
I think one thing we haven't touched upon that we probably should mention is the social aspect of university. I think even if the coursework itself might be not as stimulating or as helpful from a financial perspective, one of the key benefits of university is building out your network in terms of friends and in terms of other connections to various different industries, which could be helpful in securing a job in the future because you meet so many different people. You might join different societies, you might be able to hone your interests and find like minded people. And that
Yes.
social aspect is, can be fun in the moment, but it also could have some career benefits down the line. So if that space to have something pop out of nowhere or to have those chance encounters, that might be something that is maximized by being at university. So it's just one thing to keep in mind.
You're segueing into the next question on the opportunity costs of a degree.
I don't know what the next section is. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, because this is what Simply Simple
Oh,
is
are
all
you
about.
saying segue again?
Oh, I have to use a different word. Paving to the next segment. So you touched on, those are really good points. Touching on the different career pathways of a university degree. Just because you're doing a particular degree, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go through the traditional route of what kind of jobs that degree entails. But you can certainly use those soft skills to use it towards another area you may be passionate about. Access to considerably better jobs or better jobs. There's a whole scale. We can't judge or put a definitive word on that
Better
scale.
is in quotation marks.
Yes,
For those who
backdrop.
cannot see us,
Yeah,
we did everyone.
that's right. Very spooky, isn't it? But also, we talked a little bit about changed interests. Just because, sorry, you go to university doesn't mean you have to necessarily lock yourself into doing university. It doesn't mean you have to give up your social life as well. You can really balance that. If anything, it is scientifically good for you to get away from the textbook.
Scientifically good for you.
Yeah, a lot of studies have been demonstrated. And, with your 9 to 5, that sometimes it can be difficult adding in that gym session in, or that OzTag session, but I think you and I, being especially you've played more OzTag games than I have, it certainly is possible.
But that's after university.
Just a little, yeah, exactly. So just don't stress about not knowing that, you can't fit in these social initiatives. You can during uni and post uni. It'll be a bit stressful, but it certainly isn't possible. So, Drew, wrapping up another episode 5.
Yeah, to be quite simple, I think what we're really saying is it depends. No one size fits all. And you have to make an informed choice when it comes to, well, you don't have to, but
You should.
you might want to make an informed choice.
Preferable.
Yes, in just terms of the pros and the cons of university and taking out government debt, essentially. So I think we've covered at a high level some of those issues. But I
Hmm.
really do think the key takeaway is don't go on public transport with Fauzia. It's just very upset.
No, it's only if you're discourteous. And I'm not going to call out this specific train line, but I think people know well enough which train line I'm in. But please be mindful of other people on the train. Well, that wraps up another episode. Being mindful on the train, and second of all, is making your own judgment and making an informed choice of going to university. Really importantly, don't be stuck into a herd mentality. If someone says, "Are you sure you want to do this degree?" only you can find out. So it's a bit of a regurgitation again from not the last episode, is it?
Oh, there's so many episodes.
Well, we're losing track, guys, all for you, but thank you very much for tuning in to episode 5. Thought we'd kind of debunk and list a little bit about pursuing tertiary education. If you have any episode ideas, feel free to reach out.
Yes, thank you, and we will speak to you very soon.
Bye, guys.
See you.